Students in agronomy and environmental science in France, we went during more than 5 months around Australia and met those farmers to try to put in place a consistent agriculture. Why did they choose to integrate trees on the farm? What are the benefits for them now? We discovered a lot of different systems and different ways of thinking. But one thing was similar. All these farmers are agree. Trees have an important place on a farm. We gave the floor to them.
My definition of agroforestry is very simple. It's not something you can see particularly, it's just the outcome of a farmer being involved in forestry. It's forestry done by farmers, and to me, if we look at the big environmental issues around the world, they're occurring on farmland. Water quality, food security, carbon sequestration, the loss of forests, the degradation. Outside the industrial area, it is about farmers. Trees could be and provide support or a solution to many of those problems. So it's really, what do we need to do to engage farmers across the world who own that land so that tree growing becomes part of what they want to do? And in that sense, agroforestry might be something different in every country, in every place around the world. And I like to think every farm, it should look a little bit different because there's a different person, a different family, a different issue that's leading to that solution. And that's much more exciting for me than seeing 10,000 farmers all doing exactly the same thing, which suggests to me that there's some controlling agent behind it all. I want the farmer to be the person who makes those decisions. In that sense, I suspect they'll be different on every farm.
First, trees can be a real solution to support the farming.
My name is John Lord. I'm a Tasmanian. I'm a farm forester, and I have a strong view that farmers should look at planting trees on their farms. Here in Tasmania, farmers can, in my view, plant at least 10%, most likely 15%, maybe more, maybe up to 20% of their farms with trees, and they will still get the same production of what they normally produce on the farms. Same number of animals, same crops. If you plant trees on your farm, you get non-wood benefits quite quickly, even after a couple of years. When the trees are quite small, you can see the effect on the grass and the crops where they're sheltered from the wind. Also, in the winter, when the weather is bad, it is far more pleasant to be working behind a shelter belt than out in the plain with the cold wind. The animals like it better too.
The trees are very important for us. The trees are predominantly planted on the south side or the west side of the paddocks, which are the paddocks which are really difficult for lambing and for calving. So they provide a lot of shelter, and it lowers the wind chill effect on the lambs and on the calves, and therefore we have much higher percentages in our lambs and in our staying alive and in our calves when they're born. And that's very critical, that first few hours of birth.
If you don't have any shade and shelter in your livestock system, the bare minimum that you're losing per paddock where that is not present per annum is 30% on production. So if your animals are colder or hotter, they do less and they earn you less money. So we're trying to encourage farmers to understand what they're missing and see places like this as the preserve of potential seed supply, an example of what it could be like on their farms.
During our trip, we stayed in a lot of farms, and all of them are very pretty, very relaxing. And yes, now I can say that trees had an important value on a farm.
Also, if you have trees on your farms, especially in farms which are not large and people might want to buy for lifestyle purposes, there is a significant added value to your farms if you have trees. So you will get more for your farm if you sell it if you have trees than if you don't.
It's more like a park, our farm, rather than actually a farm looks like, which is really, really nice. And even on the times when you're not making much money on the farm, which is a fair bit of the time these days, you don't make a lot of money out of sheep, but at least you've still got a really beautiful environment to live in, and it's a real pleasure to live here.
We're really interested to improve the biodiversity, and in order to measure to see if we're doing that, we do bird surveys, because birds and the increasing of the numbers of birds and the numbers of species here is an indicator of whether or not the biodiversity is improving. So we take bird surveys every season of the year, and we've been doing it since 1998. And they really have increased. So in 1998 we had 43 species, and now in 2016 we've got 158 species of birds, which proves a bit that the work we're doing is successful.
So we're sowing grasses, sedges like reeds and rushes, small shrubs which provide habitat for the native animals, and middle story trees and tall trees, and it's going to take a lifetime for them to mature. We plant on average about 5,000 to 6,000 a year, some years up to 10,000, and we're working our way around the property. We try to link big areas of bush with smaller areas with corridors for birds and small animals, marsupials, insects. It's all part of the natural environment.
The trees have shown more than one time that they have a big role in lawn care, erosion control, salinity.
We have recently purchased back in March, and we have inherited some issues that will need pretty close attention, and the main issue is erosion. This was initially caused by people about 15 years ago, and they were from outside this district who moved in and did some aggressive land development not suited to our particular soil type, and as a result, from years of neglect since then, we have ended up with a serious erosion problem. We recently had a visit from a soil conservation expert who advised us on a solution for this, but these solutions don't come quickly, and they take a lot of time to be able to try and arrest the erosion in its path, and not try and not allow it to spread too much more.
European settlement resulted in overclearing of this landscape, and many issues arose accordingly, including erosion such as tunnel erosion, stream bank erosion, gully erosion, waterlogging, salting, exposure, lack of biodiversity, and paddocks being too big. We developed a whole farm plan in 1992 and divided the property into 5 land classes, and we have been systematically fencing out the land classes and revegetating with multi-purpose trees. We've also fenced out and revegetated the creek lines and the drainage lines, the waterlogged areas and the salt affected areas. And we fenced out remnant vegetation areas.
We have a 750mm rainfall, and we have a perched water table, so the water table is almost at ground level. By putting in trees, we're helping to reduce the water table and the risk of salinity. So we
we put in a lot of trees.
Trees create another income for the farmers. A lot of farmers did the choice to integrate trees on their farm for an economic reason. Wood chip production, saw log, hardwood. The markets are diverse and depends of the region.
In 1972, the state of Tasmania got an export licence to sell wood chips to Japan to make paper. So I was able to sell a lot of my old native forest that was very degraded, and through that process we were able to generate some income to help develop the farm as an agricultural enterprise. But I realised that planting trees and having trees on our farm was an important part of our business. So we proceeded to start replanting some trees and managing our forests and native forests differently. So we planted some radiata, that's softwood plantations, which the early ones we've now harvested and replanted. In latter years we've planted hardwood eucalypt species for mainly paper making.
It's fairly high fertile country. It's all granite based soils with a good rainfall. So we focused on Gympie messmate and spider gum, and our main focus was also on producing power poles rather than a saw log. So very large, tall power poles that are individually worth very good money, and on a per hectare basis well above any other product that we could grow here. So obviously we needed trees that grew very straight and very tall, and both of those species was well suited to that in plantation.
Our plantings, we see them as multi-purpose plantings, and part of the value is as shelter, but they're also of the more dense eucalypt species and so suitable for production of saw logs, and this is what we manage them all to. And all of them will receive at least 2 thinnings over their 30 to 40 about. And this represents sequestration of at least 900 tonnes of atmospheric CO2 a year. Along with sequestration by the other 300 hectares of land care and older trees, this might completely offset the greenhouse gas emissions from this property. About 40 hectares of these plantings were part funded by several early initiatives that had carbon sequestration as the driving motivation. But sadly, the policies and the development of a carbon trading process in Victoria were abandoned by the state government after a few years.
There are 2 forms of carbon sequestration going on. One is in the agroforestry, which is not acknowledged under the Kyoto scheme, so we don't get paid for that. But there is in the permanent revegetation, which we get either the money from the carbon that's been sequestered or from the planting. Some people pay for us to plant the trees on their behalf. The reason we do that is that we actually think that climate change is a critical thing which is happening to our farms, and we need to mitigate and slow that going down. And one of the best ways we can do it is to lower our footprint, but also to try to sequester some of the greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere.
When we came here first, we intended to clear all of our land, and that consisted at the time of 1,400 hectares of mostly heavily timbered country. In the end, we decided that the profitability of beef cattle production was so low that we would be better off managing the forests for production and their other values rather than clearing them for livestock production. However, it does produce good timber, and we can produce a reasonable quantity of pole and saw log timber, and we think that well managed forests on this country can make us more money than we could make had we cleared it and used it for livestock production. There's also a substantial nature conservation benefit, and the various surveys of plants and animals on this place suggest that we have as much biodiversity, if not more so, than unmanaged crown forests, whether they be in state forest or national park. So we are capable of producing a reasonable income per hectare per year from these forests and providing nature conservation benefits at the same time, which of course at present have no value.
More than just for wood production, farmers can get another income from the trees.
Yeah, tea tree oil was originally produced and marketed many years ago from natural stands as a substitute and an additive for nutmeg oil. That use has now completely stopped, and tea tree is sold and marketed largely for its cosmetic and therapeutic effects. And there's this interest in integrating trees on the farm with other farming opportunities I feel is really important. And I feel that you can take it further than that, and that's where I feel that we need to consider increasing the biodiversity, maybe thinking about bees and honey as another crop. So as well, my other passion is special timbers, and you can find trees that have special timber and also honey, and we can get some really good outcomes. So yeah, I think there's lots more to think about, and we have, you know, a great future if we look outside the square of just growing trees for wood.
Yeah, we've always been interested in actually using our thinnings, and initially we used our thinnings to heat the fish water. We bought a big boiler and we'd put the thinnings in there. We could put 1 metre logs, more than, and put 2 metre logs in there. And a few years ago we learned about the shiitake mushrooms, and so again we used a fair few thinnings for growing shiitake mushrooms, which grow very well on the logs that are kept inside our fish shed to keep them nice and moist and fairly warm, and the mushroom production is pretty good in there.
And we took 1 load of thinning logs that we dried down to a treatment plant, the chromium treatment plant. Went down, picked them up, and they came back in as excellent logs. We've used them a lot for building sheds and fence posts. And
when planting ages come to about 7 to 10 years, we are doing a first thinning at about 10 hectares per year. This produces over 50 tonne per hectare of pole diameter material, which has a market as firewood, plus about 30 tonne per hectare of heads. That is taken out as thinnings, has an energy value of about 2,400 megawatt hours, and this is enough to heat and power the 200 households of the 2 local towns using the sort of mature technology that you can find in Central and Northern Europe. While I'd like to take out the heads and chip them, at present this is uneconomic since there's no market for this biomass, or not enough to pay, and so these are just left in the plantation to rot with free release of the carbon stored up in them. My goal is to get a market developed in the region for about 50,000 tonnes a year of this biomass as a furnace fuel to produce heat and steam in the new industrial estate of the nearby city of Ballarat. Until then, heads just lie on the ground, contributing to the build-up of fuel in the plantations around the region, significantly increasing the risk of loss or near loss of the plantation due to fire. So fire would carry right through the plantation.
In Australia, we don't have any government support systems for agricultural products. So I made a decision 40 years ago that having a timber resource as part of our business was a protection against those very low agricultural commodity prices. And that's what I've tried to do with this property, so that when the next generation take it over, the value of the forests will be much greater than when I bought them 40 years ago.
We didn't meet only farmers, but also other people involved in farm forestry. They have created some organization to share their idea, their experiment in the same goal: promote the farm forestry.
The goal of Private Forest Tasmania is to assist landowners manage their private forests for mainly wood production, and the second goal is to help landowners expand the area of plantations on private land.
I thought one of the things that we should do is work with landowners to convince them of the value of trees that are integrated into their agricultural systems. But there are a lot of people who don't necessarily, who might partially believe that, but they don't see it as a priority. So I thought what we need to do is essentially, what I say is put the dollar sign in front of the anecdotal evidence. So what we've done, I signed a contract with the university and through them with CSIRO. So we've been around and we've chosen a whole lot of properties that have successfully integrated trees. And we're going to work with those landowners to see if we can quantify what effects that they're getting.
I run an organisation called Private Forestry Service Queensland, and it's a not-for-profit group that was originally set up to assist landholders manage both their native forests and establish and manage their hardwood plantation. We don't get any government assistance now, and we fund ourselves by doing consultancy and contractual work. And that organisation also runs the Woodworks Museum in Gympie. A big factor within our organisation is education. So we run field days and 5-day workshops, and we also have set up the museum for school groups and other groups to come into the museum, and we have presentations within that for modern day forestry, as well as talking about the history of forestry and some of the machinery and etc. that was grounded in that. We consider that in the long term the museum as an interpretive centre will be a really important aspect for educating particularly school groups and younger children, and bringing that education on through up into their adult life, so they have a much better understanding of what forestry is.
When I was involved in Melbourne University, I developed a Master Tree Grower program, which again hopes that, the term master is about farmers taking control of their activities in tree growing. So what we try to do is teach them very basic things about how trees grow, how to measure trees. We listen to what their interests are, and we try to help them explore the underlying processes behind the problems, such as shade and shelter and erosion control and biodiversity. And then over a period of time we hope to support them through farmer networks, such as our Otway Agroforestry network here, where we have peer support, where farmers begin and then share their knowledge with others. And I like the way it builds on each other, and over time a sort of culture of tree growing develops in an area through these groups. And that's the ultimate ideal of the Master Tree Grower. We've run 100 courses around Australia, and a number of courses in Africa, East Timor, Indonesia, and it's an idea that is just really exciting when we work with communities trying to explore what their needs and opportunities are. Most of the places I'm no expert on trees in the Northern Hemisphere or even in Queensland, but if you go back to principles about fundamentals about how trees grow, how you might design systems, it's pretty open, and we can share that experience and enthusiasm with farmers around the world.
And the one thing that's constant about agriculture is change. So we're constantly being challenged to change what we do, find more efficient ways to produce food and fibre, and that's what gets us out of bed of a morning.
We are coming back in France, a lot of ideas in mind, and now we are 100% sure that trees have an important place on the farm. And you?